how good top and counterbalance is against elves. Just that sheer combination on its own gets to counter every single one drop that James is going to play, and his deck contains many of them. And even aside from that, if Chihoi can't assemble top counterbalance, he can still like brainstorm away a Terminus and use that to sweep James's board, or float a Terminus with the Sensei's Divining Top on its own.
And see here, a turn 1 play from James was just Dryad Arbor. Yeah, James on a 6-card hand. I was wondering, he's like, man, first line Dryad Arbor does not seem like the hand I want to keep here. And it wasn't. He's on a 6-card hand. We go back to Chihoi. He's going to crack a fetch land. It's a hard game to play with elves, right? Because if you're too fast out of the gates, you lose to a Terminus. And if you're too slow, you lose to a counterbalance. And
Yeah,
sometimes they just swords you out of the game. You see Chihoi turn 1 is just going to swords James's land.
That's kind of brutal. I mean, that's time walk, effectively.
Well, you suspect, based on that opening, that James is possibly kept a one-lander. Like, turn 1 Dryad Arbor is really... I mean, maybe he either kept a one-lander or a hand with no one-drops, right? Turn 1 Dryad Arbor is not your preferred land drop.
Yeah, it could very easily be a 2-land hand with an Elvish Visionary or something.
Right. But the time walk does happen. And he finds Bayou, and now he does have a one-drop. So maybe it was just a bait for his swords. We'll see. It's Bayou into death, right?
If it was a bait, that was a pretty good one.
If it was a bait, that was an excellent one. I mean, right now this looks like a regular game of Magic that James was on the draw for.
Yeah.
Whereas he, like, undid his mulligan in a lot of ways.
And Chihoi almost certainly kept his hand based on the fact that it has an early card that interacts, like Swords to Plowshares. You can kind of stymie James's development, right?
Yeah.
And if he trades the Dryad Arbor for the swords but gets to keep his Deathrite Shaman, that's a win. That's a huge win.
Well played, James Hess. That's neat. Got him, yeah. We'll see where he goes from here. Does he have more lands, though? There are still, he's got a ways to go.
I mean, it could also just be that he wanted to go turn 1 Dryad Arbor, turn 2, play a 1-drop, play Cradle, have 2 mana.
That is also possible. That's super dangerous, because in that hand, like, if Chihoi has any sweeper, that hand just folds, right? Then you have, like, 0 mana on the next turn.
Yeah, of course, but what's your game plan when you're mulling to 6 on the play?
Yeah, you play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah, are you going to slow play it and, just try and grind him out, make him Terminus like 2 creatures away? Because that's not probably going to happen.
It looks like what he's doing, he has Glimpse and Cradle in his hand. So maybe that turn 1 Dryad Arbor was setting up for a big turn 2 mini Glimpse of, like, drawing 3 or 4.
Yeah, and that wouldn't surprise me.
He's going to play Glimpse. That will resolve. Chihoi, from Chihoi said, he's then going to tap Deathrite to make a Heritage Druid. He gets to draw a card. He is sequencing this very well, because now he gets to make the Gaia's Cradle, and that will tap for 2. If he can get 2 more elves into play, he could really start to draw a lot of cards here.
Or he has a Quirion Ranger, so that works as well. So even if he doesn't have another 1-drop, he can return the Bayou to his hand, which counts as a forest, untap his Deathrite Shaman, then he has 3 elves
green,
able to make mana off Heritage Druid, and then you can just keep going.
Yeah, so Quirion Ranger draws a card. He has 1 green floating. See if he has more creatures. If you're James, how many creatures do you play out? Is it like some enough to make it like a 3-turn clock, all? There's options here.
It depends on whether or not you think you can kill your opponent this turn.
Yeah, Nettle Sentinel is the next play for James, and Chihoi puts that draw trigger in the stack, and now he's a little concerned. Nettle Sentinel and Heritage Druid are in play where Glimpse has happened. Okay, like, we have to do something here. He's going to brainstorm. Maybe, like, ideally he wants to find a Swords to Plowshares for the Heritage Druid.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best one, although I think you would be willing to cast Force of Will also, because it might not do much just because James still has the Heritage Druid and is able to make a bunch of mana with it. But if you get rid of the Nettle Sentinel, there's a bigger chance that James runs out of mana eventually.
Second Nettle Sentinel might make that difficult. James drawing another card here. He has 2 mana floating. Chihoi put cards back so that he has a Terminus on top of his deck. So he needs James to not full combo him this turn.
Also, Chihoi could also just target the Heritage Druid with the 3rd elf on the stack, which would force James to activate the Quirion Ranger and use it to make 3 mana, but then he doesn't have the Heritage Druid anymore, so then James would only be able to try and go off with that 3 mana.
Yep. Elvish Visionary, James's mana pool is empty again. He gets to draw 2 off that. I think he's going to get there this turn. This looks like we're off to, like, combo town here.
I think it's close. I mean, we have 2 mana floating. We have a draw trigger.
Yep. So he draws right now. Now his elves are producing mana. Any creature he draws. So he has, you said 2 mana. He netted 2 mana there, so he has 2 green in the mana pool.
Yeah, but does he have any elves left in his hand? That's the question.
Right, he can. He has mana's nice and everything, but it is possible that he runs out of creatures. He can like make more mana. He can go up to 5. Maybe he can work his way all the way up to a Crater Hoof. He doesn't look happy at the moment. It looks like he has stalled out.
Yeah, so you can make 5. You can untap an elf with Creator Ranger. That's 6, and that's really close. But is that good enough?
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and bounce Bayou to untap Deathrite Shaman. That's another 1 mana that he can get there, so that's 6. It exiles another land. Well, it is 3 now.
Is he exiling a land, or is he attacking for 1? It looked like you just attacked.
He attacked for 1. And there is the Terminus from Chi-Hoi Yim. That is huge. About 7 cards go on the bottom of James Hess's deck. And what looked scary now looks commanding for Chi-Hoi.
Yeah, I feel like in this matchup, if you're going to go fast, you have to make sure you kill them on land turn.
Yes.
Otherwise, something like this happens. Like, oh, yeah, nice turn, man. You drew a bunch of cards, but everything you put into play, I just get to kill with my 1 card. So now we're back kind of to where we started.
Yeah, I mean, Terminus was just pretty much the whole game here. And Chi-Hoi's going to get followed up with a counterbalance as well. Interesting fact here about Terminus. So we're in the city of Atlanta, and if you know your history about Atlanta, Atlanta was actually founded where it was in Georgia because it was at the intersection of 2 railroads back in the mid-1800s, and the city was actually referred to as Terminus. So you could say he is casting a Terminus in Terminus right now.
Interesting.
Very flavorful.
Yeah, I suppose.
James is going to go for a creature here. It's Wirewood Symbiote. That's countered by Brainstorm.
It's just kind of adding insult to injury at this point.
I mean, James had a shot. It was a good one. Chi-Hoi gave him a green light. So, you know, if you got me, you got me. And he didn't have him.
Yeah, 5 floating, or 2
6
floating.
6 floating,
2
more
floating,
or less.
the potential to make 6, and just didn't have enough 1-drops to keep going.
And 6, it's real close, right? All it takes is something like 1 Wirewood Symbiote, or maybe if there was a second Glimpse mixed in there at some point, then James can get there.
Yeah, I mean, 1 Symbiote combined with the 2 Nettle Sentinels.
It's a ton of mana.
Yeah, I think that almost certainly gets you there.
Because at that point, if you have a Crater Hoof, or if you have a Green Sun Zenith, or whatever card you have, you can go ahead and find your late game.
Yeah, he had the hoof in his hand, so.
Just needed a couple. He needed a couple more mana and a way to untap the. What was the? He had 1 Deathrite. That was the 1 creature that could attack.
Correct.
So he needed an untap plus just like 1 more mana, and that would have gotten him there.
Yeah, and that wasn't a big deal because he had the Career Ranger already, and if we're talking about Symbiote would be the card that he needed to continue comboing, well, that would have also conveniently untapped the Deathrite Shaman.
So James here went for a Green Sun Zenith. Chi-Hoi tried to counter with counterbalance, missed on the trigger, but then went ahead and ventured the spell back to James's hand. And he's going to swing for 2.
Yeah, now you put a little clock on James, try and close this game out. And also, if James wants to fire off that Zenith again next turn, you get to try again with counterbalance.
Yeah, and this time Chi-Hoi drew a Brainstorm, so a lot more likely it works. You know, no rush here. The thing about the Elf deck is that once you get a counterbalance plus a Divining Top, you have, like, the mana curve of the deck is not very diverse. It is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, a couple 2s, and like a 7.
Yeah. And then, well, you have Natural Order as a 4, and then an X-Spell that can kind of get around it.
Yeah, actually, Green Sun Zenith, so one thing is you can over Zenith with Zenith, right? I can pay X equals 4 and then go find a Symbiote if I want.
Right, or a Reclamation Sage.
Yeah, you'd probably, like, what is it, 4 is the toughest mana cost for Chi-Hoi to counter, I think.
Yeah.
He has a Venser.
A Venser and maybe some Jace the Mind Sculptors, which are probably not in his deck after sideboarding.
I wouldn't think that they'd be here. So yeah, 4 is hard for him to hit. That would be, you can Zenith for 3 and then just go get something cheaper.
Right.
And he's going to cast a Zenith. This is a Zenith for 1.
So converted mana cost 2.
Let's go with Brainstorm for Chi-Hoi. Does he hit? Land, second Venser. Not the best Brainstorm. You do see, though, Chi-Hoi doesn't need too much here. He has Entreat the Angels already in his hand. So if you can't get countertop going, maybe you just make an army.
That's a solid game plan.
Yeah, he puts three, and this is, it'd be worried. Like, he puts 3 cards on top, doesn't show anything, and Hess gets a shot. He's going to go ahead and go find a 1-drop. He gets Quirion Ranger.
So if you're Chihoi and you put 2 cards back, you still have a counterbalance trigger on the stack. You know that it's not going to counter the Green Sun Zenith. You have the opportunity to crack the Flooded Strand to try to blind counter the Green Sun Zenith, but you choose not to. How does that make James feel?
So, well, it means you kind of think there's a miracle on top of the deck. That'd be my reading of that. If he put back, so the reason he wouldn't show me cards is that maybe he just has losers, right? And he just didn't have any way to do it, anything going. But in that case, he'd crack the fetch.
Right.
If he put everything back, didn't reveal, and didn't crack the fetch, then it's like, okay, well, he put a miracle on top. And both the miracle spells are terrible for the Elves deck. Terminus is good and Entreat's insane. So, and here we have it. Entreat the Angels is going to bring down an army of flyers. This is just going to be 3 of them. It's 12 power, though, a 2-turn clock. And there you have it, the Mythic from Avacyn Restored. It is the win con of Blue, White, Red Miracles. What is the official win con? The unofficial win con is Sensei's Divining Top.
Yeah. Boredom.
Yeah. Venser swings in. James is down to 16. It is only 14 power for Chihoi, so it's 2 turns. And Chihoi doesn't have that many counterspells. Like, James has a shot. It's not a good one, but he has one.
Yeah, he does. And especially after last turn where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to brainstorm in response to your spell to try and put something on top to use my counterbalance and brick. And Chihoi was just kind of like going like, oh, man, you know, my hand's not great. So he's basically all in on Entreat at this point. And James definitely has a turn, right? You know, maybe 2 turns. But he's got to get something going this turn to actually have a shot. And if he does, after getting 7 or 8 creatures put on the bottom of his deck with Terminus, that'd be pretty impressive.
So he had to weigh some options here. He had Scavenging Ooze and Glimpse of Nature in hand. And there's a couple things. He could try to start the Glimpse combo this turn, or he could try to get more mana by playing Ooze first. Ooze isn't really going to matter. Its body's not going to matter at all. You know, it's a 2/2. Okay, sure.
Yeah, and all the creatures that, you know, quote-unquote died earlier actually got put on the bottom of his deck, so there's not a whole lot of creatures in the graveyard right now. It looks like a single Wirewood Symbiote.
Yeah, he does have a Glimpse, but here's the difficulty. He's going to pass the turn, so now Chihoi gets to have those counterbalance flip to stop James on the last turn, but he also gets a second Defensor that he can work with.
Right.
So he can be anywhere from completely disruptive to, like, moderately disruptive to completely blocking James out, depending on how good this counterbalance card is.
Yeah, and I like this attack from Chihoi. With James sitting at 16 and you have 12 power worth of flyers, the autopilot mode is just attack with all 3, right?
Yeah, James goes to 9 off Ooze, but you can attack with more next turn.
Yeah, exactly. But by keeping more back, he kind of defends himself against a hard cast Crater Behemoth that might not be enough to kill him.
Yeah, he has 6 toughness he can soak up 6 trample damage now instead of 2.
Right. Plus, he has the potential to Karakas' own Venser, play that, maybe bounce one of the attacking creatures.
Sure. Yeah, he has the second Venser in hand as well. So there's a lot. He has some play here.
Yeah, and I just like this from Chihoi because it looks like he's in a winning position, and James is probably going to lose those Angels next turn, so he has to do something. And Chihoi's doing the best that he can to cover himself against things that James might be able to do to cause him to lose.
And what we're seeing here is going to weigh a fetch land. James is weighing a fetch land crack. We are still on James's turn. We know he has 2 cards in hand. So we're back to his last turn here, or what I can only imagine is his last turn. We know we had a Glimpse of Nature in hand. What else is around? You know, you got to think he's starting his turn on that, right? All right, Glimpse of Nature, and indeed it is. All right. If you're Chihoi, you probably, do you brainstorm and then check counterbalance, or do you just check counterbalance? And if you counter Glimpse, it's hard for James to win. He's going to cast Brainstorm. There's a Swords, a Counterbalance, and a Terminus. He does find the 1. And that's got to be what you want on top, right? You just counter Glimpse.
Yeah, I mean, if you decide to cast the Brainstorm at this moment, you are committed to countering that Glimpse.
Yep, so Glimpse is gone. James is going to tap 2. This is for Elvish Visionary. If you're Chihoi, do you just Venser bounce the Visionary spell too? Just like-
Probably. I mean, you could.
well, it's like you can either do that or you can maybe like wait to see if James draws Natural Order and then like bounce that one. You know, bounce the spell that
No.
matters.
Yeah, actually, I don't like. There is some merit to actually doing that and kind of choking James on mana, but it's like at this point he has 4 mana left over, maybe another one from using Quirion Ranger, and I think you can just save Venser for a spell that actually does something.
It's like for all you know, James has another Cradle in his hand. You know, and he hasn't even played a land drop yet. Yeah, I guess mana choking's like probably not as good as just fighting over the real spell.
Yeah, because chances are the real spells are either the Natural Orders, Green Sun Zeniths, or a Hardcast Crater of Behemoth.
Yeah, and actually Hardcast Crater of Behemoth, I'm not, well, let's see. Yeah, we have 4, 9, plus 9 more. So that is 18 trample damage. It's not even lethal.
No, but you get to kill off some of Chihoi's creatures and maybe gain life off Scavenging Ooze, depending on how combat works out.
Well, Chihoi could just,
Block with an Angel.
yeah, he like bounces his Venser, bounces an attacker, blocks with an Angel, takes some damage, lets nothing hit the yard, swings back.
Well, actually, I mean, you just saw Chihoi counterbalance a Deathrite Shaman, which may or may not have mattered, but now it gives James the potential to go to 9. So if he did have something like Cradle, Craterhoof, or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
he would need a few more cards in his hand because he only has 1 card. But
All right, swing with Scavenging Ooze from James Hess. It is a 3/3 at the moment. It looks like his plan here is to cradle up a bunch of green mana, eat a lot of creatures, maybe enough to survive this attack. If it's possible.
tough. I mean, you need to gain 5 life. I don't think there are that many creatures lying around.
And it's going to hit. Chihoi's down to 11. And this looks like it's going to be it. We will see. I mean, Chihoi has the end step play of bounce, Venser, play Venser. And James knows about that one. He's going to do that. First it goes back to Caracas. It recasts. Bounces.
Cradle, I guess, so you
Tap him out.
There are no shenanigans happening.
He'll go with Scavenging Ooze here. I think any shenanigans that could happen would be life gain shenanigans, he decides. So
Sure.
get rid of the Ooze. James is going to tap for 3. In response, he's going to eat 1 creature. But that's it.
I think we still have the Dryad Arbor hanging around. So I think the Cradle's actually for 4. I'm not sure, though.
Oh, you're right. That's
Yeah.
yeah. It's the sneaky forest-looking Dryad Arbor. And he's gonna go eat some Brainstorms from Chihoi's graveyard, but this should be it. It's gonna be a bounce on the Ooze, and all it will take is a turn sideways from these Angels, and that's gonna go ahead and get it. Yeah, I believe the Scavenging Ooze was bounced. I don't believe it matters.
No, me either. It was supposed to go to the hand. But
And a swing from 3 Angels will do it. 2-0, Chihoi Yim defeats James Hess, and he moves on to the finals, where he will face Brad Nelson in pretty much a rematch of our Invitational Finals.